So, warm greetings, dear friends, and welcome to this live stream. For those who are joining live, and also big welcome to everyone who comes to listen in later on. I'd like to begin by paying homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So today I'd like to present and discuss a beautiful sutta from Samyutta Nikaya. I just posted the sutta on the chat. It's 2285 from the Book of Aggregates in Samyutta Nikaya. And there's a chapter called the chapter on senior monastics, senior mendicants. And so this sutta is named after the character, the monk who is the main cause of this teaching to be given. He has a problematic distortion of view that leads him to misunderstand the Buddha's teachings, and this is explored and clarified and put right in the course of this beautiful teaching, at the end of which the Venerable Yamaka becomes arahant. So this is a really powerful teaching with a very powerful simile in the teaching, which we'll meet. Something to help us in our practice to consider these teachings. And so just to begin by looking at the name of this monk, Yamaka, means twin. So perhaps he was a twin. Or also Yama is the title in the Buddhist cosmology, also Hindu cosmology, of the Lord or God who cares for, overlooks the underworld. So the Lord of Death. And it's interesting that this is the name of this monk in this sutta, Yamaka, because he has a kind of obsession or a distorted view around death, as we'll see. So very aptly named sutta, a very aptly named monastic. So I'd like to screen share. It's quite a long sutta, so I thought it would be good to be able to see the teaching. As I read it through, you can also be looking at the text, and I'll be pausing at intervals to unpack and to discuss a little bit further these teachings. So here we go. So this is the Sutta, Yamaka Sutta, Samyutta 2285. On one occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. On that occasion, the following pernicious view had arisen in a bhikkhu named Yamaka. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, a bhikkhu whose taints are destroyed is annihilated and perishes with the breakup of the body and does not exist after death. A number of bhikkhus heard that such a pernicious view had arisen in the bhikkhu Yamaka, so they approached him and exchanged greetings with him, sat down to one side and said to him, "Is it true that such a pernicious view as this has arisen in you. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One whose taints are destroyed is annihilated and perishes with the breakup of the body and does not exist after death. And Yamaka replies, exactly so, friends. This is my understanding. And the bhikkhus say to his brothers, say to Yamaka, do not speak thus. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It's not good to misrepresent the Buddha. The Buddha would not speak thus. One whose taints are destroyed is annihilated and perishes with the breakup of the body and doesn't exist after death. So I'll just pause here to just look a little bit at this teaching, or this example of a wrong view, just so that we can understand where Yamaka's going astray and why it is that it's so obvious to all the others that he's misunderstanding the Buddha's teachings. And it's very interesting that his focus is on death, what happens after death, or at the point of death. And he is, of course, we can understand, he's creating a sense of self around one who's fully liberated at the point of death. It's a particular perception of a particular instance, but actually the flaw or the misunderstanding is the holding to a sense of self that lasts through time, that is somehow capable of annihilation. So whether we believe in eternalism, that there's a piece here, there's some part of this body or mind that lasts forever, or whether we have a understanding or a perception of annihilation, that actually at death, this very real self at this point in time actually ceases to exist. Whether we hold to eternalism or whether we hold to annihilationism, the fundamental misperception is the attachment to the sense of self, that there's something permanent here, that there's something solid, discrete, lasting, that I can reify, that I can solidify, that I can depend upon. And so Yamaka has heard the Buddha's teachings, no doubt many times, that for instance, that all things change. There is nothing that's permanent in samsara. We can observe how the body, feelings, thoughts, perceptions are constantly changing. Therefore, how can we hold on to any of this ephemeral, fleeting experience and make it me or mine or myself? And we can recognize that when we do this, if we try to hold on to anything in this realm, then of course we suffer. And indeed, the very experience of this fleeting, changing, impermanent experience of life is fraught with unsatisfactoriness. It's imperfect. It doesn't have anything within it that we would want to make me or mine, that we would want to hold on to, that we would want to depend or rely upon. So where Yamaka is fixated on this idea of annihilation of the arahant, this is where he's particularly showing his lack of understanding of these fundamental aspects of the teaching. Now, we don't necessarily all know, throughout our mind and body, we're not completely clear and free of the perception of self necessarily. We may still behave, operate in the world as if we had some sort of permanent experience here, lasting experience that we could call me or mine. We may not be free of this delusion of self fully and completely, but we can appreciate the Buddha's teachings where he's telling us that actually, when you really investigate, you can discover for yourself that there's nothing in this realm of experience that I can actually hold on to and make permanent, that I can actually control, that I can own, that I can make mine. And we learn this through investigation. But even in the process of learning this, anatta, not self, characteristic of reality, we can certainly take on the Buddha's teachings and consider, yes, maybe this is true. Maybe there is no self. Let's see. Yamaka at this time was perhaps engaging in practice, investigating Dhamma, but he had fixated on this idea of self, that there is some kind of self in one who's liberated that perishes at death. So you can see this is where the delusion that Yamaka is laboring under is pointed to in this teaching. And the monks are questioning him, trying to help him to, hey, that doesn't make sense. Can you see how this doesn't fit in with the Buddha's teachings? And he's quite obstinately holding to his view and not really interested in changing it, in opening to some other possibility. So this is where we are at this point in the sutta. And then continuing on. So although he was admonished by the bhikkhus about this wrong view, the Venerable Yamaka still obstinately grasped that pernicious view, adhered to it and declared, as I understand the Dharma taught by the Buddha, one whose taints are destroyed is annihilated and perishes with the breakup of the body and does not exist after death. So the bhikkhus kind of gave up on their attempts to discuss this point with Venerable Yamaka and approached Sariputta. Venerable Sariputta was told all that had occurred. And they asked Venerable Sariputta, could you approach the bhikkhu Yamaka out of compassion for him? And the Venerable Sariputta consented by silence. So how beautiful. The teacher, they go to call the teacher to ask him to help out of compassion. So in the evening, Sariputta emerged from seclusion. He approached the Venerable Yamaka and exchanged greetings with him, after which he sat down to one side and said to him, is it true, friend Yamaka, that such a pernicious view as this has arisen in you? And he repeats this idea. Exactly so, friend. What do you think, friend Yamaka? Is form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, friend. Okay. Therefore, can you experience this impermanent form as yourself, as me or mine? And Yamaka understands when he's approached in this way, and so compassionately Sariputta is inviting him to investigate that which is changing, that is impermanent, therefore I cannot call myself. And he understood that there was no self to be found. And again, Sariputta asked him, what do you think, friend Yamaka, regarding the Tathagata, the Buddha, the thus gone? Do you regard form as the Tathagata? No, friend. Do you regard feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, or consciousness as the Buddha? as the Tathagata? No, friend. So this is all abbreviated here in the sutta, but the essence is clear. It's the teaching that was given by the Buddha in Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. The very same teaching here repeated by Sariputta. Let's investigate for ourselves. Is there anything in our experience relating here to the 5 khandhas, to the 5 heaps of experience, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, sankhara, and consciousness? Is there anything here that we can find that has any lasting quality when we investigate? And of course, when we investigate, we find, yep, everything's impermanent, everything's changing, there's no solidity here. And then very rationally and logically, we can investigate further. The Buddha, and here Sariputta, invited Yamaka to investigate further. Well, if all of these experiences that you're having that are to be had in this body and mind are fleeting, are impermanent, is there anything then that you can reify, that you can make mine, that you can call me, that's not running away from you even as you try to grasp it? And Yamaka could very clearly see, no, indeed, there is no self that can be made out of this experience of the 5 khandhas. And then because Yamaka's pernicious view arose in relation to those who were liberated, the Arahants, the Tathagata, and their annihilation at the time of death, because this was where his view had constellated, then Sariputta invited him to investigate his perception of the Buddha. Do you see the Buddha as the form, as the feelings, the perceptions, the consciousness of that person? And slowly but surely, I suspect in the course of this teaching, then Yamaka was able to disentangle his mind from this view of something lasting, something permanent in any arahant, in any Buddha, in any person or being whatsoever. And so the compassion of this teacher, Sariputta, he's not actually berating Yamaka at all. He's not calling him a foolish person. He's just going through step by step the core teachings with him. And as we'll discover in the course of this teaching, Yamaka is beginning to appreciate, oh yeah, of course, everything's changing. Anicca sanya arises, the perception of impermanence. There is therefore no self in the created or the uncreated, anatta sanya arising. So let's return to the sutta and see what comes next. The Sariputta is questioning, using questions to approach the characteristic of anatta, of not self, the reality of anatta from all the different angles in order to help Yamaka to appreciate not self. He says, what do you think, friend Yamaka? Do you regard the Tathagata, the Buddha, as in form? No, friend. Do you regard the Tathagata as apart from form? No, friend. Do you regard the Tathagata as in feeling, as apart from feeling, as in perception, apart from perception, formations, apart from mental formations, as in consciousness, as apart from consciousness? And to each of these questions, profound questions, investigation of Dharma, Yamaka responds, no, he can't actually find the Tathagata here. And Sariputta goes on, what do you think, friend Yamaka? Do you regard form, feeling, perception, formations, or consciousness taken together as the Tathagata? Is he a solid entity made up of all these five khandhas? No, friend. What do you think, friend Yamaka? Do you regard the Tathagata as one who's without form, without feeling, perception, formations, or consciousness? No, friend. So, of course, the Yamaka can't find the person of the Tathagata either in the formations or beyond, without, away from the formations. But, friend, when the Tathagata is not apprehended by you as real and actual here in this very life, is it fitting for you to declare that one whose taints is destroyed at the time of death is annihilated and perishes with the breakup of the body? So coming back here to the pernicious view of Yamaka, and now Yamaka responds, formerly, friend Sariputta, when I was ignorant, I did hold that pernicious view. But now that I've heard this Dharma teaching of the Venerable Sariputta, I have abandoned that pernicious view and have made the breakthrough to the Dhamma. So what a wonderful moment of insight. And then Sariputta, not contented, not ready to leave things. He wants to make absolutely sure to lead Yamaka further in the Dhamma understanding. He goes on to say, well, if one were to ask you, friend Yamaka, when one is an arahant, one whose taints are destroyed, what happens to such a person with the breakup of the body after death? Being asked this, what would you now say? How would you answer? And Yamaka replies, so what happens after death? If they were to ask me this, friend, I would answer thus. Friends, form is impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering has ceased and passed away. Feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness in turn, he says, they are impermanent. All five khandhas are impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering has ceased and passed away. Being asked thus, friend, I would answer in such a way. So here we see the clarity of view that has arisen for Yamaka. And it's very helpful for us to take in this teaching, friends, because we're probably almost, if not all of us, laboring under very similar misperceptions. The Buddha called this vipallasa, distortions of view. It's very difficult for us to do otherwise until we're fully liberated, because it's so compelling for us to make me, make mine, make myself out of the experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, perceiving, feeling, body experience, and consciousness itself. We're so habituated, aren't we, to weaving together this sense of self out of experience. It's a habit. It's a very deep-rooted habit. We're so good at it. We are very quick to create. And what do we create? Really, we're seeking to create some kind of security, some kind of safety, some ground to stand on. And the ways in which we've been habitually doing this for countless lifetimes are by stitching together, weaving together, creating this patchwork out of body, feeling, perception, thinking, consciousness, and making it me. This is me, this is my life, this is my past, this is my future. And so this teaching is very pertinent for all of us who are not fully liberated. You know, it's like, let's keep remembering, let's keep coming back to this fundamental way. This teaching gives us a way to begin to disassemble that which we're assembling, to pull apart that which we're putting together, to unravel the knotty delusion of self. And so we are wise to continually remind ourselves, whenever I have some kind of sense of self arising, it's often in reactivity, it's often in relationship to other or to externals. Whenever I'm holding to anything, whenever I'm pushing anything away, whenever desire or aversion arise, they're usually arising around the protectiveness of this sense of self. It's me, it's what I want, it's what I don't want. Without the I, without the me, liking and disliking will fall away. Suffering will fall away. In order to suffer, we first of all have a sense of being somebody who can suffer, and then this somebody who suffers is, in a way, fighting reality, in a way, trying to control reality, making, creating, liking, disliking, push and pull. And so to continually remind ourselves to notice the change, notice how fleeting our lives are. Even when we're young, it's easier when we're old because we can see the aging process. It's easy when we're very young. Also, we can see the growing process in very young ones. But in the middle years of life, we can begin to feel like this could go on forever. And so it's really helpful to remind ourselves and to seek ways in which to perceive change. And of course, when we meditate, it's not so difficult because we sit, and when we really pay attention to our experience, of course, it's constantly flowing and changing. It's a process. And we can then wake up to anicca, to change, to the ephemeral nature of all experience. And so to be reminding ourselves to perceive in this way, to open to this reality, is also to help ourselves then to let go of the sense of self. Because how can there be? It's like saying there's some solid aspect to the water that's flowing in a river. Something still, something, that doesn't flow, something that stays still and steady. There simply isn't that possibility. There is simply the flow. And so in this beautiful sutta, Yamaka is really giving us a gift, the gift of his misperception, which led to this conversation with Sariputta and this reminder, actually this very profound teaching on not self. So let's return to the sutta, where we're going to now receive very helpful and profound simile to help us to understand this teaching. So Sariputta, having appreciated that Yamaka has understood the teaching, that there is no annihilation, there is no eternalism, there's nothing that we can say dies apart from the five khandhas: form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. All these aspects of our experience, these change at the time of death. They cease, they pass away. What is changing? What is ceasing? What is actually passing away? Nothing but suffering, nothing but dukkha. There's no person who dies. There's no person who's born. And if we see clearly and fully this reality, then we are no longer bound up in death and rebirth. This is the goal of the spiritual practice, isn't it? So Sariputta congratulates Yamaka. Good, friend Yamaka. And now, friend Yamaka, you know, here I'm just very touched by Sariputta's fullness of heart. He's not finished teaching him yet. Yamaka's understood, but Sariputta wants to really bring home these teachings for Yamaka, for his benefit, for his progress on the path. Such compassion, so beautiful to read this, to take this in as we read the sutta. So Sariputta continues, now, friend Yamaka, I will make up a simile for you in order to convey this same meaning even more clearly. And here's the simile. Suppose, friend Yamaka, there was a householder or a householder's son, a rich person with much wealth and property, protected by a bodyguard. Then someone would appear who wanted to ruin this person, to harm them, to endanger them, to take their life. It would occur to that person, this rich person, privileged with so much wealth and property, protected by a bodyguard. It will not be easy to assassinate this person, to take their life by force. Let me get close to them, and then I'll take their life. So the assassin would approach the householder or householder's child and say to them, I would serve you. And then the householder would appoint this person as a servant. They would serve, rising up before, retiring after the boss, doing whatever they want. The servant would be most agreeable in their conduct, endearing in their speech. The householder would consider such a person as a friend, a bosom friend, and would place trust in them. But when the servant becomes aware that the householder's child or the householder has placed trust in them, then when they're alone, this assassin would have the opportunity to take their life with a sharp knife. What do you think, friend Yamaka, when that person had approached the householder and said, I would serve you, wasn't he an assassin, a murderer even then, though the other didn't recognize him as my murderer? And when they were serving and rising up early, retiring after the boss has retired, doing whatever they want, most agreeable in conduct, endearing in speech, wasn't that servant a murderer then too, although the other didn't recognize them as my murderer? And when they came upon the wealthy boss while they were alone and took that person's life with a sharp knife, wasn't the servant a murderer then too, although the other did not recognize him as my murderer? Yes, friend. So too, friend Yamaka, the uninstructed worldling who does not see noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who does not see superior persons, is unskilled and undisciplined in their teachings. When such a person regards form as self, or self as possessing form, form as in self, or self as in form, and in the same way regards feeling as self, regards perception as self, regards mental formations as self, thinking, my thinking, regards consciousness as self, They do not understand, as it really is, selfless form as selfless form, feeling without self, perception without self, mental formations without self, consciousnesses without self. Such a person doesn't understand, as it really is, how form is conditioned. Feeling, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness are conditioned. And one does not understand, as it really is, murderous form as murderous, feelings as murderous, perceptions, formations, mental formations, and consciousness as murderous. Murderous. Such a strong language here. These 5 khandha are the assassins. One becomes engaged with form. If we're not wise, if we're not willing to engage with these Dharma teachings, we will become engaged with form, cling to it, and take a stand upon it as myself. And the same with our feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. We cling to them, we take a stand upon them, and we take them as mine, myself. And when we become engaged and we cling in this way, this leads to our harm and suffering for a long time. So here we have it, the simile of the assassin. How does one assassinate a person? With ease, without any difficulty. One becomes very close to them. One becomes beloved by them. One serves them and gives them perhaps a lot of pleasure, a lot of comfort, a sense of safety. And so we can consider this simile, how, the 5 khandhas, this body, this mind, we can be very fond of. We can be very enamored by aspects of our experience. We can appreciate being alive and having these experiences of perception, all the different thoughts, ideas, concepts, memories. To be alive, we can take great delight and pleasure in these experiences, which are nothing but the experiences of the 5 khandhas, body and mind in its different aspects. And so there is the disguised assassin, the disguised murderer. When we attach to the khandhas, we can feel very happy to do so. We can feel very safe and we can feel very fine with that for some time. But eventually, inevitably, the tables will turn, and what has been serving us for so long will reveal itself, isn't it, as our enemy. Not only our enemy, our greatest enemy, but also our killer. And I find this simile to be very apt, to be very powerful and very helpful in reminding me of these teachings, because when we become complacent, comfortable, relishing our good fortune and the health that we may experience in the body, the youth that we may experience, the good fortune we may experience, we can very easily forget the path. But if we just remember the simile of the assassin and wake up to the inevitable change that's on its way, that all good things come to an end. And as much as we've attached to those good things, that's how much we're going to suffer their loss, their seeming loss. If we can appreciate the truth of these teachings, anicca, anatta, dukkha, everything's changing. There is no self to be found. There's nothing we can hold on to in this ephemeral realm. Such is the suffering here. Then we can not be duped by the assassin. we can see the khandhas for the murderers that they are. In as much as we allow them to create us, that much we will experience our destruction. But if we see them for what they really are, not me, not mine, constantly changing, then we're not going to be attaching to them. And then there's nothing to lose, friends. There's nothing to lose. There's no murderer who can come and kill us off if we're not here, if we can't be found, if we're not identifying with the victim here. So this teaching for me, I could go on and on. It's so very helpful and kind of graphic. It's like many good similes from the Buddha and from the great arahants, such as Sariputta. It really can lodge in the heart mind and be here as a guide and a reminder. And so I'd just like to conclude this sutta. Let's go back to the screen share so you can see the final few paragraphs of this beautiful teaching from Sariputta. So then the Buddha, Sariputta, has been talking about the ignorant person who gets engaged with form, takes a stand upon it, and of course is then a victim of the assassin. The assassins that the five aggregates in this simile are. But Sariputta goes on, having described the peril if we're not connecting with the Dharma teachings and finding our safety in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. He goes on to say, but friend, the instructed noble disciple who is a seer of noble ones and who appreciates their Dharma teachings does not regard form as self, or self as possessing form, form as in self, or self as in form. And the same in relation to feelings, the same in relation to perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. We do not consider them to be me or mine in any way. One understands them as it really is, the impermanence of form, feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness, the impermanence of the five khandhas. We understand as it really is how painful they are, how selfless they are, how conditioned they are. Cause and effect, they arise due to causes, they last for some time, and then they pass away. And we understand as it really is how murderous the five khandhas are. As much as we love them, make them mine, that much they're going to kill us, friends. And so one does not become engaged with form, cling to it, or take a stand upon it as myself. We don't become engaged with feeling, perception, formations, or consciousness. We don't cling to them. We don't take a stand upon them as myself. These same five aggregates of clinging, to which we do not become engaged and which we do not cling to, they lead to our welfare and happiness for a long time. So we can make these khandhas, make this experience here and now our friend. This then leads to our welfare and happiness for a long time because we can utilize, we can relate to our experience in such a way that we are moving inexorably toward freedom, toward nibbana, when we cultivate this right attitude of letting go. And Yamaka replies, so it is, friend Sariputta, for those venerable ones who have such compassion and benevolent brothers in the holy life to instruct and admonish them. So he's expressing his gratitude to his teacher here. Now that I've heard this Dhamma teaching of the Venerable Sariputta, my mind is liberated from the taints by non-clinging. This is what the Venerable Sariputta said. Elated, the Venerable Yamaka delighted in the Venerable Sariputta's statement. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So how beautiful. This sutta is one of these wonderful examples of a person becoming fully liberated in the course of hearing the Dhamma taught. The penny drops and Yamaka becomes one of the arahants. And this understanding, simply put, he understands that there is no self, there is only change. It's unsatisfactory by its very nature. All is to be let go of, and he ceases clinging. He lets go. Let's go. And this is the work for all of us, isn't it? And it sounds simple, but of course it has many challenges. And thankfully there are many, many teachings which enable us to find our way, how to let go of this or that we notice, oh, we've been clinging to. Oh, I have a view that I've really been holding to, of making myself into something, perceiving myself as something. Okay, so again and again we have these opportunities through suffering to let go of clinging. And it's the suffering that we experience that is the way, because it's through suffering that we can experience the end of suffering. So this amazing path opens up before us, just as it did for Yamaka here. And I really want to conclude by noting how significant the sense of the compassion of Sariputta is here, how patiently and thoroughly he enables Yamaka to come out of his wrong view, and also this potential that Yamaka demonstrates here of the ability to fully let go. And this is something we can think, oh, that was in the time of the Buddha, that's only for, those days. We're now in a kind of dark age, and probably no arahants in existence, and impossible to become liberated. People often express these kinds of views, but they're nothing but views to be let go of, not to be clung to. Here in this sutta and in many suttas, we can appreciate how possible it is for the mind to be freed from delusion, from suffering, through not clinging. Let's not cling to anything, friends. Let's not cling to these bodies, these aging, sickening, mortal bodies. Let's not cling to these false perceptions, always to be questioned. Let's not cling to our thoughts, concepts, ideas, or even memories, ephemeral, fleeting, passing. Let's not cling to feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. See how they're flowing and due always to causes arising completely impersonally, completely. We can take our hands away and not hold to them as me or mine in any way. And this consciousness itself, let's be willing to let go, not to cling to any aspect here, not to make it mine, not to delude ourselves, not to stitch together our experience and make it into anything at all. Let's be ready always to let go, to come out of conditioning, to allow things to separate out, and let's be present for what's true and real, and in this way free from suffering. Ayya. So we can celebrate this sutta together with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. So this is quite a long sutta today, so it's taken up a lot of our time, but I will now have a look to see if there are any questions or comments. And thank you again for being here and for all your kind greetings and comments in the chat. Lovely to see you all, to see your names. Okay, I'm just seeing that we have a couple of questions. Thank you, Sud. Here we go. Dear Ayya, when practicing metta, we focus on beings that are in this world to direct metta towards. But then there are these teachings which ask us to see the world as it is, such as not self. How does one reconcile both teachings? When focusing metta, we focus on beings, but then how do we simultaneously see everything as not having a self? I really appreciate this question because it's very common as a question, and it really points very directly to this teaching that we've just received. So there is the sense of beings, and we do consider them as such. We reify one another as much as we reify ourselves and have a sense of me and mine. We look around us and we see other beings, and we consider them also to be lasting, of some sort of, there's some sort of coming together that has created this being. And all of this, we can see from the perspective of the Buddha Dhamma is actually a distortion of view, the vipallasa. Rather than seeing reality as the three characteristics, imbued with these three characteristics, all things we can say are changeable, anicca, are not self, anatta, are suffering, dukkha. All things have these qualities, but we are so programmed, so conditioned for so long to see solidity, to see self, permanence instead of change. We tend to focus more on the lasting quality of things rather than their changing quality, which is so much more apparent when we really look. And in the same way, we create beings where there are, ultimately speaking, simply processes, changing, ephemeral processes. And so when we practice metta, yes, there are many ways in which we're encouraged to practice loving kindness for this and that particularity, where really what we're actually confronted with, what we're actually in, is an ever-shifting sea of change, sea of impermanence, in which nothing lasts, nothing is really solidified. However, we then have these two worlds. We have the world of our perceptions, of our sense doors, seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking about things in the way of putting together pieces and creating formations, this person, that person, this experience, that experience, solidifying and reifying our experience. And then on the other hand, we have the ultimate view that there is no self in the created or the uncreated. There's only change. There's nothing personal. So how do we work with that? Well, actually, the quality of metta, so as you very well know, is unconditioned. It's a non-partial. It's not discriminating. So the quality of metta, as with all the Brahmaviharas, is that it is deconstructing. It doesn't operate, rather, from a place of constructedness. So when we practice metta, we can practice in this way that's slightly tinged with ignorance, where we consider particular beings in particular times and places and direct loving kindness to those perceptions. But more accurately, one could say, when you remove that little tinge of ignorance and practice metta in the way that it truly manifests, then one can let go of all those concepts and simply radiate loving kindness. And as the Buddha said, how do we radiate loving kindness? Truly, we radiate loving kindness in all directions. this way, that way, up, down. It's not partial. It's not going in any particular way. It's not directed towards any particular illusion of individuality or concretization. No, it's simply radiating forth, just like the sun, radiates heat and radiates light. It doesn't have any preferences. It doesn't see this and that. It simply radiates forth. So this is the true quality, nature of metta, of loving kindness. And when we practice metta, we're often encouraged by teachers to consider someone that you really love to start with, and then consider someone that you just know as an acquaintance, and then consider someone who you really don't like, you have aversion towards. This is a way of enabling people to begin to cultivate loving kindness. It's good to cultivate loving kindness if you're struggling by thinking of something that you love, somebody that you love, because it brings up, it enables, it sort of channels the energy in a good way. And it's good to practice loving kindness towards those one might perceive as enemies. If we have those perceptions, a very good way to let go of them, to heal and to overcome these kinds of perceptions is to practice loving kindness toward them. So these are skillful means and nothing wrong, very valuable, one could say. But ultimately, we can recognize that loving kindness is unconditional. It's unconditioned. It has no object, because it is a clear understanding as part of that quality, as part of these Brahmaviharas of equanimity, also compassion, sympathetic joy, rejoicing. And so with loving kindness, these qualities are they're not partial, they're not limited to ignorance, tinged perceptions of self and other. They are beyond that. And so the best way in which to cultivate these qualities is to be letting go of these perceptions of self and other, to let go of clinging and simply manifest, allow these qualities to manifest in their true way, according to their true nature. So I hope that's helpful, Sud. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, everybody. I'm so appreciating that your kind and patient listening really enables this teaching. And so grateful, even for myself, as I'm reading through the Sutta, taking in this beautiful Dharma from the Venerable Sariputta, the enormous benefit. Great blessing to have connection, contact, and to steep and to, really turn our hearts and to immerse ourselves in the Dharma teachings of the Buddha. So what a great occasion. Much gratitude to all.